Hello. I'm here to tell you about visiting the launch of our poetry magazine this week at the Seamus Heaney Centre, Poetry Ireland Review. And it's number 146, and it's edited by Stephen Sexton, who is one of the members of staff at the Seamus Heaney Centre. So couldn't resist popping along to see. Now, Poetry Ireland Review, in case you haven't seen it before, is published 3 times a year by Poetry Ireland, and they also had copies obviously on sale in the evening. I went along, I took pictures, and I'm here to tell you a bit about it. Partly this is because in Booktube I'm one of the co-hosts for Framed in September, which is a month-long celebration of books and arts mixed together, and in which we encourage people to read a book with an art or artist in it, fiction or non-fiction, and also to go to a live event. So this was my going to a live event, and also to make something creative yourself. So first of all, when you can just buy the book, why would you go to our recital? And the answer is simply because hearing poetry is the key thing, because poetry has always been initially oral, spoken, and oral, heard, and then it began to be written down. But when you hear it, you hear the way the words have been put together to create certain effects. You hear the voice of the person, and some of the people who were reading had different accents, which you could clearly hear, and that part of that was their origin story. You can hear it in the accent that's spoken with, and also the expression of the writer, exactly as they wrote it and intended it to be conveyed. And then you're watching an embodied performance, not just words on a page. But also, by getting the book, you can see how things are laid out on the page, and sometimes poems will be put across the page, or different layouts. There's also reviews, I should say, of other books of poetry in here, and essays on poetry. So there's a rich mix of different things. I'm just looking here for one where one of the poets who was reading read a poem about Harryhausen, the animator, and there had been an exhibition on about him that Chris Kitson, who'd written the poem, had gone to see. Now, I imagine it's probably the one that was on in the modern art gallery in Edinburgh, because it was on for a very, very long time. And he wrote about, is it page 61? So he wrote about this, but he also, the way it's laid out in the page is part of the whole thing of animation. You can see it's moving very, very slowly across. There's a gradual movement. So there are links with art as well, and of course this fits with Framed in September. The other thing is you get to be part of the community of poetry writers and appreciators, and the room was full. We had about 50 to 60 people in the room. You get to hear people laughing at moments when somebody is saying something interesting or humorous, especially when they're introducing their poems.
I said that the painting I was writing about was bad, but if you look at the painting, it's lovely. So I just don't worry about it. I think I don't like the painting. Anyway, after the hedge cutter. This man must be on County Road 30 on a day like that, while his niece practices painting oxeye and milkweed, the wind and her hair dancing a breezy minuet.
And that is another thing that you get to experience when you go to a recital or a reading by the poet. You get to hear them introducing the poem. And I remember a performance in Edinburgh, funnily enough, by a Belfast based poet who was talking about a particular house she lived in whenever it was around the time she was at university, and it was notorious. It had a particular colour of door, and there was an exotic mix of inhabitants in it, and it was such a wonderful story. Setting it up, the poem itself was worth hearing, but I wouldn't have missed hearing her introduction of it. So the other thing is that at this particular launch, there were two people who took part by video. So they had pre-recorded a reading of their poem, and in that way you're getting to hear international people as well, and they're able to take part even if they can't physically be there. So I really encourage you to go along to poetry recitals, be in that atmosphere. One of the great things about poetry, of course, is that a lot of poems take maybe 1 minute, minute and a half to say, and in that time you have heard a whole short story maybe, or had a whole series of thoughts, or someone has related something that happened in their past, or you just have such a variety of experiences in a very, very short space of time. So it's well worth taking the time to go to. So I'll just list who the poets were, and I'm going to look down at the list to make sure I don't miss them out. So first of all, we had Stephen Sexton introducing. Then we had Dane Holt reading, who is a graduate from the centre. Marcella L.A. Prince. Then Dan Power. Julie Morrissey. Nashwa Nasreldin. Eoin P. Murchú. Viviana Fiorentino. Chris Kitson. Cynthia Cheung. And all the people that were there as well. Now, part of the delight of location in this particular case is that it was in the Seamus Heaney Centre. So while we were in the particular area that we were mixing in, there's a general public space which is dedicated to particular pictures of the man himself and the stories of his writing, and they're beautifully displayed. They are for public visiting as far as I'm aware. Check the website for the Seamus Heaney Centre. And it was lovely just to see in amongst that there were the people mixing who love poetry, who'd come for it, who'd written for it, who were being published, chatting amongst each other, and just part of that sense of community. Also, that particular night, there's a portrait of Seamus Heaney which has been lent to the centre just for 3 months, and I got a chance to look at it and view it, and it was sitting actually to one side in the room while all the poetry reading and so forth was happening, and it was like this big presence because it's a large portrait sitting there in the room. That was really lovely. And just one of the most wonderful things is, as I was leaving, I couldn't resist just looking back with my camera and capturing a few seconds of the people who had spilt out from the event and were just standing around talking, chatting, and who knows what poetry plans are being hatched there and what that'll lead to, and if they'll be in the next issue. So that was my experience going to hear a poetry reading. Bye for now. Another mix of art with the poetry are the pictures, not only the one on the front, but also the ones contained inside.